The Congo, especially during the colonial and post-colonial periods, was the scene of many disturbing events and discoveries. Here are 25 of these discoveries, which had a significant global impact. Exploration of the Congo by King Leopold II of Belgium, one of the most brutal episodes in colonial history. Between 1885 and 1908, Leopold ruled the Congo as his private property, focused on extracting rubber and ivory. Natives were forced to meet production quotas under the threat of severe punishment, including mutilation of hands and limbs. The brutal practice of hand-cutting in the Congo Free State. Under Leopold II's regime, it was common to cut off the hands of natives who failed to meet rubber quotas, enforced by the force public. This mutilation often resulted in death due to infections and blood loss, causing trauma and social destruction. Forced labor under Leopold II's regime. Millions of Congolese were subjected to extreme working conditions, forced to work on rubber plantations and in mines, facing exhausting hours with inadequate or no pay. The brutal exploitation led to the deaths of many workers due to exhaustion, starvation, and disease. Ebola virus identified in 1976. The Ebola virus was first identified near the Ebola River in the Congo, with an initial outbreak that had a mortality rate of around 88%. The virus spreads through contact with bodily fluids from infected people or animals. Devastating conflicts in the 1990s and 2000s. The Congo faced numerous conflicts, including the Second Congo War from 1998 to 2003. This conflict involved several countries and armed groups, resulting in approximately 5.4 million deaths and millions of displaced people, with widespread atrocities such as mass rapes, child soldier recruitment, and other human rights abuses. Forced recruitment of child soldiers. Thousands of children were forcibly recruited by various armed groups. These children, often abducted from their families, were trained to carry weapons and participate in military operations. Systematic sexual violence. Mass rapes have been used as a weapon of war, resulting in thousands of victims. Conflict minerals. Valuable minerals like coltan, gold, and diamonds are extracted in terrible conditions, often funding armed conflicts. Illegal mining also leads to severe human rights abuses and environmental degradation. Illegal logging in the Congo. Illegal logging has devastated vast areas of the tropical forest, threatening biodiversity and contributing to climate change. Deforestation results in the loss of natural habitats, endangering plant and animal species, and leads to soil degradation, causing erosion and reduced land fertility. Illegal poaching and habitat destruction. Poaching and habitat destruction threaten several animal species. Gorillas and elephants are particularly vulnerable due to poaching for bushmeat and ivory, while deforestation and mining also destroy critical habitats, reducing animal populations. Mass displacement due to armed conflicts. Resource exploitation and armed conflicts have forced millions of people to flee their homes. Civil wars and violence between armed groups and government forces lead to mass displacements, with refugees often living in poor conditions in camps lacking adequate sanitation, water, food, and medical care. Rapid urbanization and slums. Unplanned rapid urbanization has led to overcrowded slums with extremely poor living conditions. Many areas lack access to clean water, sanitation, electricity, and health services, contributing to disease spread and high infant mortality rates. Public health crises. Diseases like malaria, tuberculosis, and HIV/AIDS are prevalent and hard to control due to a lack of medical infrastructure. Widespread poverty. Most of the population lives below the poverty line, with less than $1.90 a day. High unemployment and underemployment force many to work in unstable, informal jobs. Rampant corruption. Corruption hinders economic and social development. Public resources are diverted, resulting in poor services like inadequate schools and hospitals, creating an unstable business environment and deterring investors, worsening social inequality. Authoritarian governments, executions, and forced disappearances are used to maintain control and silence dissent, spreading fear among the population. These often extrajudicial and public executions serve as intimidation tactics. Chronic hunger. Armed conflicts destabilize agricultural production and destroy infrastructure, along with mismanagement and corruption that prevent equitable food distribution. Refugee and internally displaced populations. Violence and instability have forced millions to leave their homes, creating large refugee and internally displaced populations. These crises lead to hunger and malnutrition due to lack of access to food, while poor living conditions contribute to the spread of disease. Water contamination from mining. Mining activities pollute rivers and water sources, releasing toxic substances and heavy metals. Lack of regulation results in improper disposal of industrial waste into water bodies, harming local communities with increased waterborne diseases like diarrhea and cholera and heavy metal poisoning. Marginalization of ethnic minorities. Ethnic diversity in the country includes marginalized minorities, like the Pygmies, who suffer severe discrimination, affecting access to jobs, education, healthcare, and political participation. Racist attitudes perpetuate negative stereotypes and violence. Poor infrastructure. Roads are often impassable due to lack of maintenance, making it hard to transport people and goods, isolating rural communities. Schools are scarce and often operate in poor conditions, with a lack of teaching materials, inadequate furniture, and too few qualified teachers. Hospitals and health clinics face similar challenges, with shortages of medications, outdated equipment, and deteriorating facilities. Limited access to education. Many rural communities lack schools, and those that exist often lack basic resources such as teaching materials, books, and qualified teachers. Children are forced to travel long distances to attend classes, with many dropping out due to adverse conditions. Impunity for war crimes. Both rebel groups and government forces commit crimes such as massacres, torture, and sexual violence. Impunity is widespread, with few responsible parties brought to justice due to corruption in the legal system and a lack of judicial processes. Human trafficking. Human trafficking in the Congo is a severe issue, affecting women and children especially. Victims are often forced into labor, sexual exploitation, and recruitment as child soldiers. Political instability and armed conflicts exacerbate the vulnerability of populations, facilitating criminal networks. Lack of economic opportunities, high unemployment, especially among young people, and poor infrastructure, political instability, and corruption limit economic growth and job creation. Without access to education and adequate training, many Congolese cannot qualify for the few jobs available, forcing much of the population to rely on the informal economy to survive, perpetuating cycles of poverty and economic insecurity. These discoveries and events highlight the extreme challenges faced by the Congo and the need for international intervention and support to alleviate suffering and promote sustainable development.